My hands trembled as I read the text message from the realtor, the bright screen of my phone illuminating the small break room. Everything's ready for closing tomorrow. Just need your down payment confirmation. I leaned against the blue-painted wall of the break room, my nurse's ID badge swaying slightly with the movement. 8 years of saving every tip, every overtime shift, every holiday bonus. My dream of owning that beautiful craftsman-style house was finally within reach. My name is Audrey, and I was about to learn that mixing family and finances can destroy more than just bank accounts. Need some company? Rachel appeared in the doorway, still wearing her scrubs from the morning shift. My cousin had always had perfect timing, especially on days like this. Just checking some messages during break, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The excitement of tomorrow's closing was almost overwhelming. Rachel's dark eyes studied me carefully. You seem distracted. Everything okay? Actually, I couldn't contain my smile. Remember that house I showed you? The craftsman with the wraparound porch? The one you've been saving for? Don't tell me. Closing is tomorrow. The words felt like sparklers in my mouth, bright and exciting. Rachel's face lit up, but before she could respond, my phone buzzed again. A message from Victoria, my aunt, appeared. Dinner tonight. My house. 7 p.m. Important family matter to discuss. Victoria? Rachel's expression shifted subtly. Be careful, Audrey. You know how she gets about family finances. I shook my head, pocketing my phone. It's probably about the family trust again. Besides, what could go wrong? My savings are secure. The closing is set. Little did I know, I was about to discover just how wrong things could go when family ties become financial nooses. Evening, Victoria's mansion. The marble countertop felt cold under my fingertips as I stood in Victoria's pristine kitchen. The house always felt more like a museum than a home, every surface gleaming with calculated perfection. More wine, dear? Victoria's voice cut through my thoughts. She stood there in her tailored Chanel suit, crystal decanter poised with practiced elegance. Since my mother's death, she'd appointed herself the family matriarch, her investment firm's success, giving her the financial authority she craved. No thanks, I replied, gesturing to my barely touched glass. I should keep a clear head for tomorrow's closing. Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched. Oh? What closing? I'm buying a house, I said, unable to contain my excitement despite the subtle tension in the air. That craftsman I showed you pictures of. The one with the wraparound porch. The crystal decanter met the marble counter with a sharp clink. Darling, we need to discuss something important first. Her tone shifted, causing my stomach to tighten instinctively. Victoria's kitchen. Confrontation. What's wrong? My years of nursing experience made me particularly attuned to sudden shifts in tone, and Victoria's voice had taken on an edge I recognized all too well. There's been a family emergency. Victoria pulled out her iPad Pro, her manicured fingers tapping the screen with deliberate precision. Nathan's medical bills have completely drained the family fund. We need everyone to contribute. I frowned, my medical training kicking in. What family fund? And what medical bills? I just spoke to Nathan at work yesterday. The one your mother helped establish before she passed. Victoria slid the iPad across the marble counter. You signed the paperwork during Christmas dinner. You're a joint holder on the account. My heart stopped as I stared at the banking app. My savings account, the one I'd been building for 8 years, working double shifts at the care facility, saving every extra dollar, showed a balance of 0. What did you do? The words came out in a whisper, my nursing calm deserting me completely. What was necessary for family? Victoria's face softened with practiced sympathy, the same expression I'd seen her use at charity galas. Nathan needed emergency surgery. Family always comes first, Audrey. Your mother would have wanted. Stop. I stood up so fast my nurse's eyed badge clattered against the counter. Don't you dare use Mom to justify this. I spent years caring for her in that facility, watching her decline. She never would have wanted this. Sit down, Victoria commanded, her philanthropist's mask slipping. You're being dramatic. This is exactly why you're not ready for home ownership. Dramatic? You stole my house down payment. 8 years of night shifts, holiday rotations, extra hours. My voice cracked with the weight of all those sacrifices. I did no such thing. You authorized the transfer when you signed the joint account agreement. What agreement? I never. Then I remembered the stack of papers she'd had me sign during Christmas dinner. She'd said they were updated beneficiary forms for Mom's life insurance policy. You tricked me. The realization hit like a coding patient's flatline. Victoria's kitchen. Confrontation continues. Victoria's lips thinned to a sharp line. I protected you from making an impulsive decision. The family needed those funds more than you needed some quaint little house. In my position as a financial advisor, I made the prudent choice. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone. Years of dealing with difficult situations in the care facility had taught me to stay calm, but this was testing every ounce of my professional composure. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. Her smile turned razor sharp, reminding me of predatory investors I'd seen at charity events. I have your signature on every document. Perfectly legal. Legal doesn't make it right. I'm a nurse, Victoria. I understand better than anyone what real medical emergencies look like. Nathan hasn't had any surgery. Right? She laughed, the sound echoing off the expensive marble surfaces. Right is protecting this family's interests. Right is honoring your mother's wishes by putting family first. You spend your days changing bedpans. You're still so naive about how the real world works. The comment about bedpans hit harder than she knew. I leaned across the counter, getting right in her face. My voice came out steady, the same tone I used with difficult patients. Mom died under my care in that facility. I held her hand during her last breath. She would be disgusted by what you've done. The color drained from Victoria's perfectly made-up face. Get out of my house. Gladly. I grabbed my bag, the weight of my nursing credentials inside reminding me of who I really was. But don't think this is over. Don't be foolish, Audrey. You can't win against me. I have connections you couldn't imagine. I turned back at the door, meeting her gaze with the same strength I used facing daily tragedies at work. Watch me. Leaving Victoria's house. The door slammed behind me with a satisfying thud. In my old Honda Civic, a stark contrast to Victoria's fleet of luxury cars, I finally let the tears fall. 8 years of double shifts, of missing holidays with friends, of falling asleep between rounds. All gone in an instant. My dream house slipping away like a patient flatling despite our best efforts. But beneath the grief, something harder was taking shape. The same determination I felt when fighting to save a critical patient. My phone buzzed. The realtor again. Need that confirmation by 9 o'clock. Tomorrow. Everything okay? I typed back with shaking fingers. Have to postpone. Family emergency. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to a number I hadn't called in years. Marcus, my childhood best friend, who'd become a financial investigator. If anyone could help me unravel Victoria's web of deceit, it would be him. He picked up on the third ring. Audrey? This is unexpected. Marcus, I need your help. I took a deep breath, pulling into the parking lot of the care facility where I worked. The familiar sight of the building steadied me. Remember all those weird things we noticed about Victoria after Mom died? I think I just found the tip of the iceberg. I'm listening. His investigator's instincts were already engaged. Good. Because I'm about to tear my aunt's perfect little world apart. As I drove home that night to my small apartment, Victoria's words echoed in my head. Family comes first. She was right about one thing. This was about family. But not the way she thought. This was about justice, truth, and making sure she never hurt another person the way she'd hurt me. As a nurse, I'd sworn to do no harm. Victoria had made no such promise. Mom's old house, the next day. The attic of my mother's old house smelled like dust and memories of her final days. The scent reminded me of the care facility where she spent her last months, a mix of antiseptic and fading life. Cardboard boxes towered around me, each one a potential clue to unraveling Victoria's schemes. I'd been at it for hours when my phone buzzed. Any progress? Marcus's voice crackled through the speaker. Nothing concrete yet. I shifted another box, my muscles aching like they did after a long shift. But Victoria's story about Nathan's medical bills doesn't add up. I just spoke with him at the hospital. He hasn't had any surgery. As a nurse, I would have known if he had. Interesting. What else? Mom's will is missing. The copy Victoria showed us after the funeral left everything to the family trust. But I distinctly remember Mom telling me during her final days that she'd set up individual inheritances for the attic floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around to find Rachel standing at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide with concern. I'll call you back, I whispered to Marcus and hung up. What are you doing up here? Rachel asked, stepping closer. Her writer's curiosity was evident in her expression. I could ask you the same thing. This is still my mother's house. My voice carried the same protective tone I used with vulnerable patients. Rachel's face softened. Victoria sent me to check on you. She's worried you might do something. Impulsive. Worried I might find something, you mean. I pulled out a dusty folder, my hands steady from years of handling delicate medical records. Like these bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts starting the day after Mom died. Rachel's hands began to fidget with her necklace, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. Audrey, please be careful. Victoria has connections everywhere. Even at your care facility. In the attic, confrontation with Rachel. Is that a threat? Or a warning? I asked, my professional instincts kicking in. After years of reading patients' nonverbal cues, Rachel's anxiety was clear as day. She glanced over her shoulder, lowering her voice like family members do when discussing sensitive diagnoses. Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but last year, when I questioned some discrepancies in my trust fund, strange things started happening. My freelance writing assignments mysteriously dried up. My rental application was denied. I set down the folder, my nursing training making me hyper-aware of her increasing distress. Victoria did that to you? Rachel nodded, her writer's hands trembling. She is Lawrence, the family lawyer, in her pocket. He handles all the financial cover-ups. Eleanor, Mom's old business partner, too. They've been working together for years. She moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. But Victoria made a mistake with you. She got greedy, took too much at once, left a paper trail. Just like she did with your mother's case. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of the bank statements, my hands steady from years of precise medical work. Help me, Rachel. Help me take her down. She hesitated, writer's instincts clearly battling with fear. I can't openly oppose her, but she reached into her bag and pulled out a small key. This opens Mom's old filing cabinet at the lake house. Victoria doesn't know I have it. As I took the key, something fluttered from between the bank statements, a handwritten note in my mother's familiar script. The handwriting was shaky, like many of my terminal patients' final letters. My dearest Audrey, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. Don't trust the official will. The real one is with Marcus at Coastal Credit Union. Victoria must never know. Love, Mom. My hands shook, just as they had the day Mom died. Did you know about this? Rachel shook her head. But it doesn't surprise me. Victoria's been rewriting family history for years. The attic door suddenly slammed below. Heavy footsteps on the stairs, like the dread sound of approaching bad news in the hospital corridor. Attic confrontation. Quick, Rachel whispered, grabbing the documents and shoving them into her messenger bag. Act natural. Lawrence appeared at the top of the stairs, his tailored suit as out of place among the dusty boxes as a CEO in a hospital ward. Ladies, Victoria sent me to check on you. Just helping Audrey sort through some old memories, Rachel said smoothly, her writer's instincts crafting the perfect cover story. Right, cousin? I forced a smile, the same one I used when reassuring anxious patients. Right. Nothing important here. Lawrence's eyes narrowed slightly behind his designer glasses. Victoria mentioned you might be upset about the family fund situation. Perhaps we should discuss this in my office. As the family's legal counsel, I'm concerned about your emotional state. No need, I said, standing up and brushing dust from my scrubs. I hadn't even changed after my morning shift. I understand perfectly now. Family comes first, right? He nodded slowly. Exactly. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. As we followed him downstairs, Rachel squeezed my hand. 3 quick pulses, our childhood signal for meet me later. Outside the house, Marcus was waiting in his government-issue car around the corner. I slipped into the passenger seat and pulled out my phone, showing him the photos of the bank statements. The car smelled of coffee and long stakeouts. This is bigger than we thought, he said, scrolling through the images with an investigator's practiced eye. These transfers. They're sophisticated, professional. Like something I'd see in major fraud cases. Can you trace them? My voice held the same urgency I used when calling for emergency consultations. It'll take time. But Audrey. He looked at me with the serious expression I recognized from our childhood crisis moments. If what I'm seeing is right, this isn't just about your savings anymore. This could be major financial fraud. I thought about my mother's shaky handwriting, about Rachel's warning, about the years of manipulation I was just beginning to understand. Good, I said, my voice carrying the same determination I felt during difficult night shifts. Because I'm done playing nice. First stop, Coastal Credit Union. It's time to find my mother's real will. Marcus started the car. Victoria won't know what hit her. No, I agreed, watching my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror. She won't. Next morning, local coffee shop. The coffee shop buzzed with morning activity as Rachel slid into the booth across from me, her face pale beneath her writer's complexion. Victoria's on the warpath. She knows you went to Coastal Credit Union yesterday. Let her fume. I pushed a latte toward her, my hand steady from years of precise medical procedures. The bank manager confirmed Mom's safety deposit box was emptied 3 days after her death. Want to guess who signed for access? Eleanor and Victoria, Rachel said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. They're always together when something shady happens. Exactly. But here's the interesting part. The manager remembered them because they argued in the lobby. Apparently, Eleanor wasn't happy about something. In my experience at the care facility, that kind of disagreement usually means someone's conscience is acting up. Marcus appeared with his laptop, sliding in next to me. The screen displayed a series of complex financial transactions that reminded me of medication charts. Speaking of Eleanor, you'll want to see this. He turned the screen toward us, showing a series of bank transfers. Every major withdrawal from your account was followed by a deposit into Eleanor's offshore account within hours. Rachel leaned forward, her writer's curiosity piqued. That's not all. Remember Theodore, Victoria's ex-husband? He didn't leave her for his secretary, like everyone thinks. He found something in her files and threatened to expose her. A week later, his business was audited, and he lost everything. Jesus, I whispered, my medical training making me acutely aware of my rising blood pressure. How long has this been going on? Years. Victoria's been playing puppet master since before your mom died. The family fund is just her cover for. The bell above the coffee shop door chimed. Eleanor walked in, her designer handbag clutched tight against her cream blazer. Our table fell silent. She spotted us and froze, looking like a patient caught leaving against medical advice. Something like guilt flashed across her face. Then she turned and hurried out. Follow her, Marcus said, already standing. I'll track her car. Parking lot confrontation. I caught up with Eleanor in the parking lot, my years of rushing to patient emergencies making the sprint easy. We need to talk. She quickened her pace toward her Mercedes, keys jingling nervously. I have nothing to say to you. Really? Not even about my mother's safety deposit box? My voice carried the same authoritative tone I used with uncooperative patients. She stopped so abruptly, I almost ran into her. Her perfectly maintained facade cracked slightly. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then explain it to me. As a nurse, I'm pretty good at understanding complicated situations. Eleanor glanced around the empty parking lot like a patient checking for eavesdroppers. Not here. Meet me at the old boathouse by the lake. 3:00. Come alone. Before I could respond, she jumped into her Mercedes and sped away, leaving the scent of expensive perfume in her wake. Well, that was dramatic, Rachel said, catching up. Her writer's instincts were clearly analyzing the scene. You're not really going alone, are you? Of course not. Marcus will be nearby. I checked my phone. A text from Lawrence had just arrived. Need to discuss recent developments. My office. 2 p.m. He's trying to head us off, Rachel said, reading over my shoulder. Victoria must be getting nervous. Good. Let's give her something to really worry about. I forwarded Marcus's banking evidence to my email, then dialed Lawrence's number. My voice took on the calm authority I used during medical emergencies. I'll be there, but I'm bringing proof of fraud. Your choice whether you want to be part of the problem or the solution. Silence on the line. Then, my office has a back entrance. Use that. Lawrence's office, 2 hours later. I sat across from Lawrence in his wood-paneled office, sliding copies of the bank transfers across his desk. My nursing uniform felt out of place among the leather-bound law books, but it reminded me of who I was and what I stood for. His face grew increasingly pale as he reviewed them, like a patient receiving bad news. This is. He cleared his throat, loosening his silk tie. This is very serious. No kidding. Want to tell me why you've been helping cover it up? My tone was the same one I used when confronting staff about medication errors. He loosened his tie further. Your aunt can be very persuasive. She has information that could ruin my career. Things from law school. Blackmail. Add it to the list. I leaned forward, using my best patient advocacy voice. Help me take her down, Lawrence, or go down with her. Your choice. He stared at the documents for a long moment, like a doctor reviewing concerning test results. There's a USB drive in her personal safe. Records of everything. But I don't have access. Rachel does, I said. Victoria trusts her to water the plants when she's away. Lawrence checked his Rolex. Victoria has a charity board meeting at 4:00. The safe is behind the painting in her study. I stood up, smoothing my scrubs. Looks like I'll be late to my meeting with Eleanor. Eleanor? His head snapped up like a patient hearing bad news. Don't trust her, Audrey. She's not what she seems. What do you mean? But Lawrence was already shuffling papers, avoiding my eyes like a guilty patient. Just be careful. And Audrey, I never saw these documents, and we never had this conversation. Outside, Marcus was waiting in his car. How'd it go? Change of plans. We need to get into Victoria's house before 4 o'clock. I showed him Lawrence's text with the safe combination. Ready to commit some light breaking and entering? Breaking and entering to expose fraud and theft? He grinned, reminding me of our childhood adventures. I'm in. En route to Victoria's house. As we drove towards Victoria's mansion, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your mother tried to stop her too. Don't make her mistakes. My stomach clenched, the same way it did before a difficult procedure at work. Marcus, I said quietly, my medical training making me hyper-aware of the rising tension. I think we need to find out what really happened to my mom. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his investigator's instincts clearly on high alert. One thing at a time. First, let's see what's in that safe. I nodded, watching Victoria's mansion grow larger in the windshield. The house loomed like a sterile hospital building, cold and imposing. One way or another, today would change everything. Victoria's mansion. The security code beeped green as Rachel led us into Victoria's house. My heart pounded against my ribs as we crept toward the study. The same adrenaline rush I felt during emergency responses. Hurry, Rachel whispered, her writer's observant eyes scanning for danger. Victoria's meetings sometimes end early. Marcus kept watch at the door while I moved the painting, a pretentious oil landscape, revealing the wall safe behind it. My fingers, steady from years of delicate medical procedures, input the combination Lawrence had provided. The safe clicked open with surgical precision. Got it, I breathed, reaching inside. My hand closed around a USB drive, several folders, and… What's this? A small red diary. Its leather was worn soft with age, like a well-used medical reference. My mother's initials were embossed on the cover. Guys! Marcus's urgent voice cut through the silence, sharp as a code blue alarm. Car coming up the driveway. It's Eleanor's Mercedes. Shit! Rachel hissed, peeking through the curtains. Her writer's instincts for drama were unfortunately proving correct. I shoved everything into my medical bag. Fire escape. Now. Outside Victoria's mansion, we scrambled down the metal stairs just as the front door opened. Crouching behind a manicured hedge, we watched Eleanor stride into the house, phone pressed to her ear, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor. Yes, Victoria, I'm here. No, the safe looks untouched. Of course, I'll check. The USB is still. What? Her voice rose sharply, echoing through the open window. What do you mean? Lawrence called. Marcus tugged my medical bag strap. Time to go. We ran to his car, parked around the corner. As we pulled away, I saw Eleanor burst out of the house, frantically dialing her phone. Her composed accountant's facade had completely crumbled. That was too close, Rachel said from the back seat, her face flushed with adrenaline. What did you find? I pulled out the USB drive with gloved hands, old habits from nursing dying hard. Let's find out. Marcus's apartment. Marcus drove us to his apartment where he could safely access the drive's contents. While he worked at his desk, I opened my mother's diary. Its pages were filled with her familiar handwriting, growing shakier towards the end, a detail only a nurse would notice. Holy shit, Marcus said suddenly, staring at his laptop screen. These aren't just banking records. There are emails, contracts, offshore account details. Victoria's been embezzling from multiple family trusts for years. Look at this. Mom knew, I said, pointing to a diary entry. She wrote that she confronted Victoria about missing funds 3 days before she died. She was going to expose everything at the next family meeting. Rachel's face went white, her writer's imagination clearly connecting the dots. The meeting she never made it to, because of her accident. A heavy silence fell over the room, like the moment before calling time of death. Marcus cleared his throat. There's more. These documents show Victoria and Eleanor have been running a sophisticated fraud scheme. They've been using the family trust as a front to. A sharp knock at the door made us all jump like startled staff. Police. Open up. Escape from Marcus's apartment. Marcus quickly ejected the USB drive and tossed it to me, his movements precise like a seasoned investigator. Back door. Go. I'll handle this. Rachel and I slipped out just as Marcus opened the front door. Through the window, I glimpsed Lawrence standing behind two officers, looking as uncomfortable as a patient before surgery. We ran 3 blocks before stopping to catch our breath. My nursing stamina coming in handy. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Safe. Lawrence filed complaint about stolen documents. Cops leaving. Meet at usual spot in 1 hour. We need to talk to Eleanor, Rachel said, her writer's analytical mind working overtime. She's the weak link. Did you see her panic back there? Already on it. I showed her my phone, where I'd composed a message with the same directness I used for medical updates. Have the USB. Know everything. Meeting in 30 minutes at the lake house, or these docs go public. The response came quickly. Coming. Alone. Don't do anything stupid. Lake house. The lake house was deserted when we arrived, looking more like an abandoned patient room than a vacation home. Rachel took position upstairs with a clear view of the approach, while I waited on the deck. The USB drive felt heavy in my scrubs pocket. Eleanor's Mercedes appeared right on time, purring up the gravel drive. She got out slowly, hands raised to show she was alone. Where's Victoria? I called out, using my authoritative nurse's voice. Not coming. Eleanor climbed the deck steps, her designer outfit pristine, but her composure cracking. She doesn't know I'm here. Start talking. Confrontation on the deck. Eleanor sank into a chair, suddenly looking older and tired, like my late-stage patients who'd given up fighting. Your mother was my best friend. When she discovered what Victoria was doing, I helped her gather evidence. But Victoria found out. She swallowed hard, her perfectly maintained facade crumbling. The night before your mother died, Victoria threatened my daughter's life if I didn't help cover everything up. Why tell me this now? I kept my voice steady, the same tone I used with distressed patients. Because of this. She pulled out a folded paper from her Chanel jacket, hands trembling. Your mother's last letter to me. Read it. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper, my medical training recognizing the shaky handwriting of someone under extreme stress. The date showed 1 day before Mom died. Hazel, if anything happens to me, the proof is in the summer cabin's basement, behind the old wine rack. Keep Audrey safe. She's the only one strong enough to finish this. I looked up at Eleanor, my pulse quickening like during a code blue. The cabin's been locked for years. She reached into her designer purse and withdrew a key. Not anymore. Before I could respond, Rachel's warning shout rang out like a hospital alarm. Cars coming. Multiple headlights appeared on the access road. 3 vehicles approaching fast, cutting through the darkness like ambulance lights. Victoria, Eleanor whispered, her face showing the fear of someone who'd seen too much. She must have followed me. I grabbed her arm with the same urgency I used in medical emergencies. Is what's in that cabin enough to take her down? She nodded. Everything. The original will, proof of her crimes. All of it. Then let's go. Now. As we rushed to her car, my phone lit up with a message from Marcus. Got away from cops. Victoria's called an emergency family meeting for tomorrow. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. The game was reaching its end game. And this time, I had all the pieces. Summer cabin basement. The summer cabin's basement smelled like mold and secrets, reminding me of the hospital morgue. Eleanor's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating rows of dusty wine racks. There, she pointed, her manicured nail catching the light. The third rack from the left. My fingers, steady from years of medical procedures, traced the wooden frame until I felt it, a slight gap behind the rack. Pulling hard, the entire section swung out like a door, revealing a small alcove. Clever, Mom, I whispered, reaching inside. A metal lockbox sat waiting, exactly where she'd hidden it years ago. Eleanor handed me a small key from her key ring, her hands trembling worse than my terminal patience. Victoria's probably already at the lake house, she said. We don't have much time. The lockbox opened with a click. Inside, I found a thick manila envelope and a USB drive labeled evidence. Footsteps creaked on the floor above us. We froze, like nurses hearing an unexpected code blue. Audrey? Marcus's voice called down. It's me and Rachel. Relief flooded through me. Down here. They hurried down the stairs, Rachel clutching her phone. Victoria's gone ballistic. She's called every family member, telling them you've lost your mind, and are making up lies about her. Perfect timing then, I said, pulling out the contents of the envelope. Because we just found. Wait. Something wasn't right. The papers were wrong, too new, too crisp. And the USB drive. Eleanor's flashlight beam suddenly steadied. I'm so sorry, Audrey. Her voice carried the same tone I used when delivering bad news to families. The basement door slammed shut above us. A key turned in the lock. You set us up, I whispered, the betrayal hitting harder than a failed resuscitation. Rachel rushed up the stairs, rattling the door handle. It's locked. Victoria has my daughter, Eleanor said, her voice breaking. I didn't have a choice. Basement confrontation. Heavy footsteps moved across the floor above. Victoria's voice carried through the door like a diagnosis no one wants to hear. Did you really think it would be that easy, Audrey? That your mother would just leave evidence lying around for years? Where's the real evidence? I turned to Eleanor, using my sternest nursing voice. Tell me. She wouldn't meet my eyes, like a patient hiding symptoms. Victoria destroyed most of it. What's left is in her private vault at First National, along with your mother's real will. Victoria called down, her voice dripping with false concern. Which, sadly, none of you will ever see. The police are on their way, Audrey. Breaking and entering is such a serious charge. Marcus pulled out his phone. No signal. Signal jammers, Eleanor explained quietly. Victoria thinks of everything. I grabbed the flashlight from Eleanor's hand and swung it toward the small window near the ceiling. Marcus, give me a boost. Don't bother, Victoria said, sounding like a doctor dismissing a patient's concerns. Those windows are barred. Now, here's what's going to happen. The police will find you all trespassing, with stolen documents in your possession. Quite a scandal. Unless what? Sign over your rights to the family trust. Walk away. I'll tell the police it was all a misunderstanding. I laughed, the sound harsh in the dark basement. You really think I care about the money now? This is about what you did to Mom. The silence above was deafening. Be careful, Audrey, Victoria finally said. Accidents run in the family. Rachel gasped. Marcus grabbed my arm. Even Eleanor looked shocked. Did you just confess to killing my mother? Final confrontation in the basement. Of course not. Victoria's voice turned silky smooth, like a toxic medication in a sweet coating. I'm simply pointing out that tragedy can strike anyone, even young, healthy people. Even tonight. While she talked, I'd been examining the bars on the window. My years in the care facility had taught me to notice structural weaknesses. They were old, rusted, and the frame. Marcus, I whispered, my voice carrying the urgency of a code blue. Those documents you copied from the USB drive. Did you send them anywhere? He nodded. Encrypted email to my work account. Why? I pulled out my mother's diary. Because Victoria made the same mistake with me that she made with Mom. She underestimated how much evidence we'd already gathered. Raising my voice, I called up to Victoria, using my best emergency room voice. Hey, Aunt Victoria. Remember Mom's old diary? The one from your safe. I just sent photos of every page to the family email list, including the entries about your threats before her death. You're bluffing. Check your phone. Footsteps rushed away from the door. A moment later, Victoria screamed, the sound of someone watching their perfect world collapse. Now, Marcus, I hissed. He rammed his shoulder into the window frame. Once. Twice. On the third hit, the entire frame broke free from the rotting wood, like a breakthrough in a difficult case. I turned to Eleanor. Coming? She shook her head, looking like a terminal patient accepting their fate. I'll keep her distracted. Save your mother's name, Audrey. Please. We climbed out just as police sirens wailed in the distance. Running through the woods, I could still hear Victoria's fury echoing from the cabin. Where now? Rachel panted as we ran. First National Bank, I said, my mind as focused as during a critical procedure. The night manager owes Marcus a favor. And Victoria's private vault won't stay private for long. Outside the cabin, my phone buzzed, messages flooding in from family members responding to Mom's diary pages. Each one more shocked and angry than the last. Similar to how families react when they discover medical negligence. The family meeting tomorrow just got a lot more interesting, Marcus said, his investigator's instincts clearly sensing victory. I smiled grimly, feeling the same determination I felt when fighting to save a critical patient. Victoria wanted to talk about family secrets? Fine. Let's talk about all of them. First, National Bank. Late night. You can't access this vault without proper authorization, the night manager said, glancing nervously between Marcus and me. Marcus leaned forward, using his federal investigator authority. Remember when I helped clear your brother's fraud charges? Time to return the favor. The manager wiped his brow, looking like an anxious patient. Victoria will sue the bank. Victoria will be too busy dealing with the FBI, I said, sliding Mom's diary across his desk. Read the entry from March 15th. His eyes widened as he read, the color draining from his face. This is about money laundering, and worse. I met his gaze. My mother died 3 days after writing that. As her nurse, I know exactly how suspicious her death was. Marcus stood abruptly. Follow me. The bank's vault area felt colder than the rest of the building, reminiscent of the hospital morgue. Marcus's key card beeped 3 times before the heavy door swung open. Vault 247, he said, leading us down a narrow corridor. You have 15 minutes before the security system resets. Inside the vault. Inside Victoria's vault, we found stacks of documents, USB drives, and a sealed envelope marked Original Will, Margaret Stanley. My hands trembled like they had during my first hospital procedure. Got it, I breathed, hands shaking as I opened the envelope. Marcus was photographing everything else with his phone. Audrey, look at this. Offshore account numbers, transaction records. Victoria's been stealing from more than just your family. A text lit up my phone. Where are you? Victoria called the police again. Rachel, we need to hurry, I said, stuffing the will into my scrubs jacket. Suddenly, the vault door began to close. No, no, no. Marcus jammed his foot in the gap, but it kept moving with the relentless force of hospital security doors. Marcus, override it. The manager's voice crackled through the intercom. I'm sorry. Victoria's here with security. She knows about the access. Marcus, don't. The door sealed with a heavy thunk, trapping us inside. Well, Marcus said into the darkness, this is less than ideal. I pulled out my phone, using its light to examine the documents we'd found. At least we have what we came for. Mom's real will. Proof of Victoria's crimes. Which won't matter if we suffocate in here. The intercom crackled again. This time, Victoria's voice filled the vault. Found something interesting, dear niece? Final confrontation. Vault. You killed her, didn't you? I said, my voice carrying the same steady tone I used when confronting medical errors. Mom was going to expose you, so you had her killed. Such an active imagination. But since you're so interested in the truth, let me tell you what really happened to your mother. Marcus was examining the vault door's hinges with my phone's light. He caught my eye and nodded slightly. Keep her talking. Your mother was weak, Victoria continued, her voice echoing in the vault like a diagnosis of terminal illness. She thought everyone deserved an equal share of the family wealth. She wanted to dissolve the trust, give everyone their portion. Can you imagine? All that carefully managed money scattered to the winds. So you stopped her. My voice remained clinical, detached. I tried to reason with her, offered her a partnership, but she was determined to ruin everything I'd built. The brake lines in her car. That was regrettable, but necessary. Marcus froze. I felt the blood drain from my face, like watching a patient flatline. Did you just confess to murder over a recorded bank security system? Silence. Then chaos erupted outside the vault. Multiple voices shouted. Something heavy fell. The door's mechanism whirred to life, and it swung open to reveal Rachel standing with Marcus and 2 FBI agents. Her phone was held up, recording. I called in that favor you mentioned, she said to Marcus. The FBI was very interested in Victoria's financial activities. Victoria was face down on the floor, hands being cuffed behind her back. You stupid girl, she spat at me. You have no idea what you've done. Actually, one of the agents said, thanks to your confession and the evidence, Ms. Stanley just recovered. We know exactly what's been done. Victoria Mills, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and the murder of Margaret Stanley. Courthouse steps, 1 month later. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters as Victoria was led out in handcuffs. She caught my eye as she passed, her designer suit replaced by prison orange, her perfect makeup gone. For a moment, I saw something I'd never seen before in her expression. Defeat. It reminded me of patients finally accepting their diagnosis. Life sentence, Marcus said, squeezing my hand. No possibility of parole. Rachel hugged me from the other side. It's really over. Not quite, I said, watching Victoria disappear into the prison transport van. There's one more thing to do. At the Craftsman house. The drive to my new house felt different this time. The Craftsman's wraparound porch welcomed us with late afternoon sunshine, and Nathan was already waiting on the steps with a box in his hands. Found these in Victoria's storage unit, he said as we approached. Old family photos. Thought you might want them for the house. Inside, the empty rooms echoed with possibility, like a patient ready for healing. Marcus and Rachel started unpacking boxes, while Nathan and I sorted through the photos on the floor. Look at this one, he said, holding up a faded picture. Your mom and Victoria as teenagers. They actually looked happy together. Before money poisoned everything, I said, taking the photo. Young Victoria smiled at the camera, arm around my mother's shoulders. Both so innocent, unaware of what lay ahead. The doorbell rang. Eleanor stood on the porch with her daughter, Amy. We brought a housewarming gift, Amy said, holding out a small pot of herbs. Mom said Aunt Margaret used to grow these in her kitchen. Dazzle. Eleanor smiled, looking years younger without Victoria's influence. She always said a home needs something living to grow with it. New home, evening. I invited them in, watching as Amy gravitated toward Nathan and the photos. Like a successful patient rehabilitation, new connections were forming, healing old wounds. They were sharing stories, laughing over old memories, creating the bonds Victoria had tried so hard to prevent. Lawrence arrived next, carrying a thick folder. His lawyer's precision now served a better purpose. The last of the paperwork. Everyone's inheritances have been properly distributed. He pulled out a set of keys. These belong to you. Your mother's lake house. The real estate agent can list it whenever you're ready. I'm not selling it, I said, taking the keys with the same certainty I felt during critical care decisions. Mom loved that place. We'll use it for family gatherings. Real ones, this time. The afternoon flowed into evening. More family members dropped by with food, furniture, and stories. Theodore installed new security locks, while his wife helped arrange the kitchen. Marcus set up the Wi-Fi network. The house slowly came alive with voices and laughter, like a recovering ward filled with healing patients. Nick found me on the porch, taking a break from the chaos inside. You okay? He asked, handing me a glass of wine. Better than okay. I looked through the window at my family, my real family, working together to build something new. Just thinking about Mom. She wanted this, you know. Not just the fair distribution of money, but this. Family supporting each other instead of tearing each other apart. She'd be proud of you. Of us, I corrected. I couldn't have done this alone. Heidi poked her head out. Hey, we found something interesting in one of Victoria's boxes. You need to see this. Living room, evening. Inside, everyone had gathered around the dining table, where Eleanor was holding a manila envelope, her hands steady now without Victoria's influence. These are letters Victoria wrote, but never sent, she explained, her voice carrying the weight of long-held secrets. One for each family member, including you, Audrey. She wrote them the night before her arrest. I opened mine slowly, recognizing Victoria's precise handwriting. The letter read as clinical as a medical report. Audrey, by the time you read this, I'll have lost everything. You're stronger than your mother was, smarter. You beat me at my own game, and part of me is proud of that. I convinced myself I was protecting the family fortune, but you protected the family itself. That's what Margaret would have wanted. I'm sorry I lost sight of that. Victoria, well, Nathan said into the silence. That's as close to a real apology as we'll ever get from her. It's enough, I said, folding the letter. We can't change the past, but we can build something better. Marcus raised his wine glass. To new beginnings. To family, I corrected, looking around at the faces of people who had gone from strangers to supporters, the real kind. Epilogue. Late night. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat on my new porch swing, listening to the neighborhood settle into darkness. The house keys felt right in my hand, like a well-worn stethoscope. My phone lit up with a message from Nathan. "Thank you for bringing us back together. Dinner at my place next week?" I smiled, typing back, "Wouldn't miss it." Inside, the basil plant sat on my windowsill, its leaves reaching toward the moonlight. Mom was right. A home needs something living to grow with it. And now, finally, both the house and our family had room to grow. The porch swing creaked gently as I rocked, at peace with the quiet. Victoria had tried to build an empire of secrets and fear. Instead, she'd given me the chance to build something much stronger: truth, trust, and a real home for the family Mom had always believed in.